Okay. So how many of you guys have any experience with wildfire? Anyone at all? No. Knowledge of? Okay, you've seen it? Okay, perfect. So this way when I make mistakes, no one will catch me. So what I'm studying is thinning mountain pine beetle stands. And the question is it good for regrowth or is it just really good for firefighters? Because if you thin it, it could make it a lot better for plants to grow, or it could introduce a whole bunch of air and lower the RH and create huge wind-driven fires. So we have to kind of figure this out before we do this in case we have a consequence we don't intend. So, background. Mountain pine beetle epidemic has been in Alberta for about 20 years. It's been in BC a lot longer. It arrived from BC, so we have a lot of history there. Basically, we can see into the future through BC. And with that, and as of 2011, BC had about 18.1 million hectares of major affected stands. So present risk in these stands is mostly blowdown, creating fuel loading, and fire risk of stands of like standing timber, standing dead timber. It also creates the issue with poor regeneration, especially in denser stands. This is quite an open stand with a lot of blowdown, not necessarily all pine, but a lot of stands look like this. There's just so much dead fuel, and this actually is a lot fallen over for the size of stand. Working in cooperation with CANFOR, and their hope is to provoke regeneration and recoup some of their costs as far as the stands that they possess. They're going to do that through opening up stands and hopefully getting trees to grow faster. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm happy with that. Get trees to grow faster and fuel reclamation. And then my study goal is to assess fire probability and effect on treated stands in Grand Prairie. I'm going to be looking at fine fuel moisture, duff moisture, and drought code moisture. Basically, it's size of fuel and how deep into the soil you're going looking for it. And I'm going to be also looking at fuel load. So as they treat the stands, they're going to be thinning them. Here you have an example of your various FMC, DMC, DC. So this is in layer in the soil. On top, you'll also have fine fuels, little coarser fuels, and big heavy fuels. So this, if you're not familiar with it, this is what I'm actually looking at. And the reason why this is important is because if you have a volatile site, you are going to get more fire, but if you have a site with less fuel, you're going to get a creeping ground fire, which doesn't affect your trees, and just simply clears out the undergrowth and doesn't necessarily burn hot enough to kill your saplings. The issue is if you don't do that and you have a full pine stand that's fully dead, lots of standing fuels, lots of ladder fuels, you end up with this. This is rank 6, it burns everything, it melts rock. So nothing lives. So the site prep, what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 different randomly selected sites, and we're going to run machinery through. On the control group, obviously nothing will happen. On the thin group, we're going to run machinery through on machine corridors 5 meters wide with paths of thin trees 15 meters wide, and they're going to remove any affected pine trees, so green, gray, or red and dead. And also remove ladder fuels. So these are better examples. This is the kind of site density we're talking about. The measurements we're going to be taking are FMC, DMC, and DC. So we're looking at 3 different sites and 20 plots per treatment, 20 plots per treatment. We're going to be taking measurements every 14 days, and I'm going to be finding randomized areas within the sites to take a 10-meter square area for fuel loading. My time is a little off, but at least I'm going faster. So my data, my imaginary data from Greece. What we have is, in each of these, you have a control, thinned, and cleared area. Because you can't plot these directly in each other's group without this one disappearing and this one taking over the most of the graph, I had to do them differently. Basically, what this is showing is that as different fuels, so the thin group and the control group, go into more extremes, they're going to pull away from the thin and the cleared group are going to pull away from the control. While this might look like you have a greater risk of fire and a greater risk of a very high impact fire, if you then tie those into actual fuel percentages, fuel loading, what we're hoping to see is that you actually have a lower risk of fire. The probability might be slightly higher, but the actual impact of the fire will be significantly lower simply because it'll be a creeping ground fire. Additionally, with the machine guards that are punched through, they'll create fuel breaks. So, conclusions, viability and effects. It does seem extremely viable because these stands that we're considering are going to be machine thinned anyways, or they're going to be clear cut in the attempt to regrow. We're hoping in the current system where you start with a stand replacing fire like this, which creates an even-aged stand, which is very susceptible to pine beetle attack. What we're hoping to do is involve ourselves right here, thin out the stand, create a multi-age stand, and then create a shorter loop with smaller fires, and hopefully not end up with these massive, huge events that are burning in huge amounts, and end up with whatever disappeared, which was happy little saplings. So, yeah.